Where did you live?
In Kenosha.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born and raised here. Our family life was lots of fun. We had 6 brothers and sisters, or 6 of us. Most of the time it was just going to the park and fooling around, killing the day, you know, when we were little. Or going to school as far as I went to school, but I didn't go only through the 9th grade, and then I quit. And then during the war days, I was always busy with collecting tin, metal of all kinds, and paper drives and clothing drives and stuff like that. And that's what we busied ourselves with.
Did anybody else in your family serve?
Just my older brother. He served 20 years in the Army, and he was a Korean War vet. He won the Bronze Star while he was in Korea, which is pretty good.
How did you join?
It goes all the way back to 1941. The Japs bombed Pearl Harbor. And that's when I decided, I was 10 years old, and I made up my mind I was going to be the military man. So when I hit 17, there was no option. I quit school and joined the service.
What branch of the military did you join and why?
I went to join the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps wouldn't take me at 17. I was real tall, and I was real skinny. I weighed about 120 pounds, and I looked like a little baby. So they told me to go home and get fattened up and whatnot. Well, so I didn't want to go home, so I joined the Army. And then I spent 4 years in the Army. And then after I got out of the Army, I tried again to join the Marine Corps. And now they were cutting back from World War II strengths down to peacetime strengths, so they wouldn't take anybody again. So I joined the Air Force. I thought, well, I'll try the Air Force, see what they're like. So then I went in the Air Force, and then after a couple of years, the Air Force started cutting back also, and they offered us a chance to go into the reserves if we wanted. Well, I didn't like the Air Force because I was in the military police in the Air Force, and most of it was guard duty, you know, guarding some airplane out in the flight line, or prison guard. One time they even had me in a nut ward, and they had 2 of us in a nut ward just in case some of those guys would really go off wacky, you know. And some of those guys were so shell-shocked from World War II. But so anyway, when I had the opportunity to get out of the Air Force, I took it. And then I came back into town, and the Marine Corps guy was in town again, but they still weren't taking any Marines. They weren't enlisting anybody new. But they did allow me to transfer from the Air Force Reserve into the Marine Corps Reserve. Well, once they did that, I had them. And I finally got in the Marines because then I requested active duty. Now, in a sense, I am in the Marines, so they had to honor my request. So I went back on active duty. Then they put me all through boot camp again and all of that sort of stuff. And then I spent the rest of the 20 years on active duty with the Marines.
What was life like in the military?
Some of it was horrible, and some of it was really great. It was the great part of it was you met so many people and made so many different friends from so many places in the United States, and so there was a lot of closeness to the families in there, and it was just great meeting all these new faces and places all the time, and also the great part was traveling, seeing different places, seeing different things, seeing things that you just don't want to see. But the bad parts of it were, I was sent over, when I was in the Army, I was sent over to Trieste, Italy. And the world thought the war ended in 1945, but it hadn't. And the communists were moving from Yugoslavia and trying to take over Trieste, Italy, which is the northern part of Italy. And we were sent in there to stop that action, in which we lost, well, in 10 years we lost about 100 guys. Watched the British headquarters get blown up. At one time, we would stand guard duty out at outposts out there. We had a regular building we slept in and everything else, but we were out there for a couple of weeks, and it was right on the border. So every once in a while, a Yugoslav company or platoon or something would come down and try to get across the border, and it was our job to stop them. So it would get a little scary at times. And we had to walk border patrol every night, not every night, at night. We'd walk border patrol along the communist border there, and every once in a while they had somebody get captured. So Yugoslavs would grab the last guy in line and take him for a prisoner and hold him there for a month or so, just political stuff, that's all. They didn't harm them at all, they just try to make their presence known, I guess. And that didn't happen to me, thank God. I made sure I wasn't the last guy. Cowards go up first. But for the most part, I was in the infantry. I was a rifleman for the most part. And I liked it because it was outdoors all the time. I liked that type of duty. One nice thing about it was as you guys are growing up and as I grew up, you never like to take orders from your parents. Do this, do that, clean your room, pick up your socks, blah, blah, blah. Well, in the Army, they would give you something to do. They'd tell you to do something, and then they left you alone. Left it up to you to figure out how to get the job done without a bunch of harassment or anything. So you got to think a lot, and as a result of it, you got to learn a lot, and figure out a way out of the mess. So I like that part of it. They didn't badger you all the time. But then there were some things that I didn't like. As an example, after World War II was done, I was in Germany, and to see all of the buildings that were bombed out, little kids that had carved themselves a little igloo underneath a pile of bricks, and that's how they were living, and eating out of garbage cans, stuff like that. That was sick. Those were the bad parts.
What war did you serve during?
I didn't serve in any. I was in during Vietnam and during Korea, and as close to a war as I came was that 3.5 years I spent in Trieste, Italy, keeping the communists out of there. That was as close as I came to a war. But fortunately for me, they always found something else for me to do. I was training other troops or other assignments. I always found something different for me to do, so I never hit either one. But I did serve almost 6 years overseas.
What was your specific assignment?
My basic assignment was I was an infantryman. I was carried a rifle and was supposed to shoot it whenever somebody attacked me or something, but fortunately I didn't have to shoot at anybody. But that was basic. And then toward the very end of my career, I got into computers. They wanted to send me overseas again, and geez, it's got to be something better than constantly going overseas, because I was married by then. And so they told me that if I'd re-enlist for another 6 years, they would get me into computer work. So I finished my last 8 years, I think it was about that long, in computers. Well, the Army was a lot of book learning and a lot of marching and a lot of parades and learning how to shoot a rifle and how to salute an officer and all that kind of stuff. But the Marine Corps training was 10 times as rough. In fact, even at the time I went in the Marine Corps, I already had over 6 years in service, and I still had my doubts if I was going to make it through boot camp. It was rugged on it, and there was they taught you an awful lot of hand-to-hand combat, as well as all of the the rules and regulations of the Marine Corps, you know, how to march Marine Corps style. There was a lot of combat readiness type thing. Everything from poor to rotten. Most of the time, because there's the Army and the Marine Corps, they didn't provide very good quarters and stuff like that. In fact, the Marine Corps, I think, had the worst living conditions, mostly in Quonset huts or in tents or on a sleeping bag out in the middle of a trench somewhere, that type of stuff. So the living conditions, no, I didn't like the living conditions at all. And then when we're in what they call garrison duty, in other words, peacetime in the States here, even at that, we lived in a barracks, but there was like 40 guys in one big room, you know, and double bunked side by side. So no.
Roger Derwae served in Kentucky, New Jersey, Indiana, Wisconsin, Illinois, San Diego, California, Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Italy, Germany, Austria, and Okinawa, Japan, before returning to Kenosha. How long total did you serve?
Well, I served 20 years on active duty, the three branches combined, duty, and then 10 more in the reserves after Marine Corps Reserve. So a total of 30 years.
How does your time in the military still affect you?
How did it affect me? Oh, I grew up fast, and every bit of it was positive. Continuous learning experience. Always learning something new. If it wasn't learning a new job, it was learning a new weapon or something, but it was always a learning experience. And I thought it was a very positive learning experience. I don't think I'd be half the guy I am today, which isn't that great, but I wouldn't be half the guy I am today if I had not gone in. I would have wound up just another factory worker, probably.
Does it still affect you today?
I remember it all, yeah. I remember, I can remember so much of it, all the way from the day I arrived at Fort Knox, Kentucky for my first day in basic training. And I got yelled at right away because I failed to salute an officer. I didn't even know what an officer was, but I failed to salute him, so I got yelled at.
How did it change your perspective of the world?
The military?
Yeah.
How did it change? Well, it made me a very anti-war advocate. I don't believe in war. I don't believe in all this junk that we're doing now and with Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan and all these other crazy countries. I think it's about time we started taking care of our own country rather than building other countries and fighting their wars for them because they don't want to spend the money on an army. As an example, here we beat the Germans down to the dust, literally down to dust from World War II, a war they started, and we beat them. And yet they got a bigger and better and richer country than we got. They got more money in the bank than we'll ever have in the United States because we're supporting all of their fights. You know, so I'm totally anti-war guy. I am definitely for compulsory military service or government service, not necessarily military. But I think every kid out of high school should, somewhere along the line, before they go to college, they should serve 2 years working in a hospital or working for the city or working for the army or some kind of service for their country, and then continue on with their life. Because it's not until you've done something positive for your home and your families that I think you should go out and start spreading your wealth around.
Did you keep in touch with anyone that you served with?
I did for years and years and years, and unfortunately, I only know of one friend of mine that's still alive. And he was an Air Force guy. He lives in Virginia. And he's getting on up in years too, and he's kind of sickly. Yeah, I talked to him at least once a month on the phone.
Yeah.
He lives in Virginia. And I've been out there to visit him several times. But yeah, I stayed in touch with quite a few of them for a long time. But unfortunately, like I said, I don't know of any of them other than this one Air Force guy that's still alive and me.
Did you go back to school at all after your service?
No. When I was over in Italy, back in 1950, I got my GED. I took the test, and I did get a diploma. They said I had to go back to my school, and they would give me the diploma. They gave me a record that showed what scores I made, and they said that I passed with real good marks. So I came back to Kenosha, and I talked to them at Unified School District. I don't think we were unified at that time. Back in 1950, I don't think it was unified at that time. But anyway, I went to whoever was in charge there, and they told me that they could not give me a diploma unless I would spend 1 year in class to do some catch-up stuff. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm in the Army. There was no way I could do it. So I never pursued it at all. I just gave up on the idea. And then I thought about doing it a couple of times, but different things happen. You wind up with the kids, and then something else happens. So I never followed through. And I just got my diploma a month ago, and that was a surprise. My granddaughter Carrie surprised me one day. She had gotten hold of my military records and submitted them to somebody in the school. So she got with them and some of her friends that knew how to do things, and they got a hold of the veterans people. And between the school and the veterans thing, they decided that my military, the things that I did in the military, and then after I got out, I spent 20 years at Snap-on running the computer room there for them. I was in charge of manager of the data processing. So between all of that experience, they decided I had enough experience enough education now to warrant a diploma. So she called me up one day and said, don't plan on going anywhere next year. I got a surprise for you. And then I found out I was getting a diploma.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Would I like to share?
Yeah.
Just that it's a great life.